Greetings and welcome. Thomas Cox here with Jim Prinzing, bringing you the M2 Managing Managers podcast. Today's episode is Building Trust. How is trust built? What does it even mean to build trust with somebody? And we've said before that, well, if you want to build trust with your team, you got to hold one-on-ones. But it's more than that, because it's possible to hold one-on-ones in some sort of formulaic, fill-in-the-blank, paint-by-numbers way and completely fail to build trust. So if your people don't trust you, they will not follow you. If you find you don't trust them as much as you need to, first work on them trusting you, and then you'll have the traction you need to ask them to change. So we're going to break down trust into its three component elements so you understand in your bones how to build trust in both directions. And let me pause and say this. So that's my intro on what I think we're going to talk about, but I want to hear what Jim would love to say.
I think, well, it's impact over intent, right?
Yes.
Because really when it comes to trust, it's not what you think you are, it's what the other person experiences. And so you may
wait, say that again. So I think I'm super trustworthy because I have all these beliefs about myself, and I know I have good intentions, Jim.
Right,
Of course you should trust me.
Sure.
I'm a hero in my own mind.
Yeah.
Why don't you trust me more?
Yeah.
And the answer isn't in me. The answer is in your experiences of me.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a classic case of impact over intent.
And by the way, you'll often hear people say, well, self-awareness is very important for leaders. Well, this is an instance of that because, self-awareness has two flavors. That's me knowing my own internal state. And number two is me knowing how I look to others, how others are experiencing me, how I appear to be. And that's where the trust building comes in. People will trust you to the extent.
By understanding the constituent parts of what makes up trust, you can use that you can turn that self-awareness flashlight on yourself and say, okay, where am I showing up for this person well and where am I not? And also it gives you the questions that you can ask them, which is probably the best way to find out, right?
I love it. So we keep talking about the three elements that make up trust. Let's actually just give that to folks now. So trust is built on three elements. It is the other person's perception of your competence, their perception of, or their experience of your benevolence, and their experience of your integrity. That's it. And we will spend the rest of the episode diving into each element and tearing it apart so you really understand the pieces. And the point here is that you yourself trust other people based on your subjective assessment of the other person's competence in whatever the domain is you're going to trust them in, their relative benevolence toward you. They can't be super selfish and super stingy and super self-serving, or they can't be like all closed off with weird, unknown or suspicious motivations. And they have to be, dependable. And if a person ticks all three of those boxes, you will start to trust them, even if you aren't consciously aware that you've made this assessment. And other people do the exact same thing. Like literally, this is how the brain works to assess trust. And the research on this is from C. Sean Burke. It was published in 2007. There's a great book on the subject by John Blakey called The Trusted Executive, which is where I first learned about this when I interviewed John for my prior podcast. So let's look at these one by one. And I want to start with you, the listener, and Jim and me all asking ourselves, how do we trust others? And then we'll trust, we will have faith that other people build their subjective assessments along basically the same lines.
What I love about this is, this is to the leadership framework, but it really works for almost any. I mean, I have yet to find something with this model doesn't work on. It could work on how you trust brands, how you trust companies, really anything.
Yes. Yeah, this is literally an X-ray into how the human brain constructs this elusive concept of trust, and it's from component elements that are each separately and subjectively assessed. So someone comes to the door and they want to walk my dog. And the first thing I want to know is, do they have any understanding of dogs? Are they competent? Do they know which end of the dog the leash should attach to? If my sense is that they don't know how to put a leash on a dog, okay, my sense of their competence is very low. They don't seem to know anything. Now, conversely, if my existing dog walker, who's very, very good, and my dog loves this dog walker almost as much as they love me, and they can handle multiple dogs and never seem to fight, and my dog is always happy to go on the walk and seems happy when he returns. It's like, okay, these all seem like the elements that would make up competence, the ability to deliver results, the demonstration of expertise in that domain of dog walking. And then one day, Jim, my dog walker says to me, hey, I'm branching out. I also want to be a financial advisor. Can I invest your portfolio for you? And I have to give the dog walker the bad news that there's nothing about walking dogs that persuades me that he or she has the slightest knowledge of how to invest my money. It's like these do not transfer. It is not transitive. You can't be good at one thing, therefore presumptively good at something that would seem completely unrelated. And I will pause and say, if you want people to trust you in some domain, make it very clear what the domain is. And then rather than make claims about your expertise, demonstrate your expertise, testimonials, examples, your rate of return on investment, or testimonials from all the people who said, I could never find anyone to walk Fido because he would attack everyone and he hates strangers, but he loves dog walker John. So great, dog walker John he's a dog whisperer. Okay.
So can I ask a question? How does competence play out in the context of the M2 manager? So you're managing a team of managers. Like how does competence play
This
in
is where
that?
it gets very dangerous, because if you believe your job as a manager is to do X, and the other person whose trust you want them to trust you, but their belief on what a manager is supposed to do is very different, then they will be assessing you on things that you're not assessing yourself on, and they'll be looking for demonstrations of competence that you're not attempting to demonstrate. I'll give you an example. I worked with a guy once, I don't work with him anymore, who was very command and control, and he expected to see you, speak sharply to your subordinates and criticize them and that they should be afraid of you. Like that was what he was looking for. And if he saw evidence that your people liked you and felt warmly toward you and weren't afraid of you, then he would think you weren't very good. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't think I want to demonstrate that. And it works both ways. I mean, you could have a subordinate who thinks, well, if you're the boss, you should have all the answers. And you think as the boss, you're supposed to ask good questions and have your people come up with answers. Now, that's a very common divide in different cultures. I'm aware that there are certain cultures where if the boss doesn't have the answer, he's seen as not a good boss. And I think that's actually a very dangerous culture, and I would train people out of that. I would not not allow that belief to thrive in my organization. It's like, please don't ever think your boss has all the answers. If your boss thinks he has all the answers, that's dangerous. If you think the boss is supposed to have all the answers, that's also dangerous, because the people with their hands on the work know the most about the work. And I would make that part of the cultural training and the indoctrination, is to try to get people to see, okay, this is what competence is supposed to look like. And this is onboarding, this is meeting of minds, this is expectation setting. And if you allow people to have their own beliefs about what competence looks like, you will be at the whim of their unspoken, subjective, unconscious beliefs about what you're supposed to look like for them to think that you're competent. And so you may need to educate the other person. Say, okay, so what does a good manager look like? Well, a good manager asks questions and doesn't show up with all the answers. They're going to say, what? It's like, oh yeah, here's the proof. Here's the demonstration. Here's why that's true. It's part of this whole body of knowledge that we have, this whole set of beliefs we have here about the proper relationship between frontline workers, their supervisors, middle managers, all the way up. We always think the frontline people know the most about the nuts and bolts of daily work, and we trust them, we believe in them, we invest in them, and so on and so forth. Like that would be important to know. So if you want to be trusted, getting clear on what competence actually looks like, setting clear expectations, mutual expectations, is an easy thing to get wrong. We're so used to just assuming everyone thinks what we think, and it could easily trip you up. So there's that. And that, by the way, that's one of the reasons why we in our kickoff meetings, for instance, we talk about, we're going to train people to be a really good manager, and then we lay out, here's what everyone should expect managers to do. And one of them is build highly trusting relationships with all of their directs. And people's eyes bug out sometimes. They're like, that sounds like we have to be friends with them. It's like, no, it means they have to trust you and you have to trust them. And that means investing in these three subjective experiences here on the screen. And it's actually your job as a manager to be trustworthy in their eyes, which means giving them certain experiences, and requiring them to be trustworthy in your eyes, which means if they behave in ways that seem incompetent or they behave in ways that seem not benevolent or low in integrity, that you'll have to, with humility and love and curiosity and calm empathy, talk to them about that and say, hey, when you say you'll show up at 9 and you don't show up till 10, it kind of lands as low integrity for me because you didn't do the thing you said you would do. And it makes me feel negatively towards you a little bit. Is there something you can do about that?
So just to dot the I and cross the T on competence for the moment, it's really about creating clarity, whether you are looking for someone to trust you or whether you are looking to create more trust in another person. Clarity around the
Yeah.
domain is really
Yeah. What is the domain? What does expertise really look like? How can you tell? And to do the education necessary to,
well, is it education or is it, I mean, it's really shared agreement.
I think it might be a little of each.
I mean, in part, it's education. Like, hey, here's what I'm delivering to you as your leader or as your as your supervisor. It's in part that, but it also might be part understanding what their expectations are for your competence
Oh, I
and
recently heard something that you will laugh at. So,
coming to a mutual agreement. I mean,
yeah,
it's not dissimilar from the first couple steps of the accountability loop.
yeah. I was listening to a marriage therapist say that a lot of spouses mistakenly think that she operates a drop-off center where you can drop off your defective husband and get him fixed. And then you can come back and pick him up in a few hours and he'll be different. And she's like, no, that's not, if that is your model of competence for a marriage counselor, you are mistaken. That is not what's going to occur. And so, like, setting expectations in a relationship is one of the most important ways you establish the ground rules for how to assess the other person's competence or how they should assess yours. Okay. Uh, so,
So
and by
competence means, you know, the ability to do what you think that the other person expects you to do in the domain in the domain. I think this is interesting because when we talk about the accountability loop, we talk a lot about integrity being part of the accountability loop. And I think through this conversation, I'm realizing that that there's a piece of competence that can be
yes.
remedied by strong accountability protocol practices as well.
Yeah.
So
Good. The clear setting of expectations up front of what you should and should not expect. I want to change gears and talk about benevolence if you're ready to.
yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So when we subjectively assess the other person on their competence, their ability to, deliver the goods, to get the contract signed, to scope the project, to walk the dog, to invest the money, whatever it is. Benevolence has to do with two sub-elements, one of which is the obvious one. It's generosity, selflessness. Are they going to charge me every possible penny? Are they going to look for every opportunity to jack the price up? Or are they more open-handed? Are they more generous? More, in other words, selfless as opposed to selfish. Now, you don't want to be so selfless that you're a victim or a martyr. People don't respect that, and it isn't actually good for you long term. But you want to be at least somewhat generous, at least some of the time. And the other thing that people overlook, I overlooked it. was the other aspect of benevolence, which has to do with openness and transparency. People need to know what your agenda is. And people often overlook that. It's like, well, I know what my agenda is. Well, that's nice, but I'm not talking about you trusting yourself. I worked with a guy one time, and he was getting increasingly unhappy with me until finally one day he said, Thomas, I'm really confused about something. And I could tell it bothered him. And I was in my early days of my consultancy. This would have been early 2000s. He said, how do you make your money? Because I was in the early stage. I hadn't charged him for anything yet. I was just getting to know his business. I was doing some free consultations, trying to sound whether he'd be a good client. He turned out to be a great client. But he's like, how do you make your money? Because he was like waiting for me to start charging him. And he didn't know like what my plan was or how I do that. And I did not realize that my not saying that out loud to him was making him uncomfortable. And thank God he said so. That exchange prompted me to be crystal clear on what my agenda is. When do I charge? When do I not charge? And here's another way you can build your benevolence points in other people's minds is when you are open about what you're feeling. If I say, to you, Jim, hey, I'm feeling a little let down, or I'm feeling a little frustrated with you, or not mad. I'm not full of anger at you, like, oh, I'm really mad at you. It's just, hey, I was feeling a little disappointed yesterday with how things went. Can we talk about that? Like the fact that I'm opening up about my internal state counts as openness. It counts as openness. And people,
Yeah, it's vulnerability.
you're not like making it your fault that they feel that way. So it's not their fault that you feel that way. As long as it's not wrapped up in blame or anger or something like that, being appropriately open about your emotions is, I think, a great way to build benevolence. And one of the reasons I start every meeting, or almost every meeting, with each person sharing something they're grateful for, in addition to it being a way of shifting into sage mind, is it gives people a chance to disclose things about themselves, which gives everybody openness and transparency points with each other. So they start to trust one another. They start to get to know each other. They know what motivates the other person.
Right. I think this is the one where, competence and integrity both are a bit more technical. Uh,
Absolutely.
you can
Absolutely.
you can dive into competence and sort of break down the equation and have the conversation and create the clear agreements. And similarly with integrity, it's about fulfilling your obligations, and again about having clear agreements and then making good on those agreements. Right. Right. Benevolence is the one that it really is about examining your internal motivations. And, if you're expecting someone else to trust you, and realizing that people can smell BS a mile away. Like
We're all
we're,
very finely tuned at that for the most
we're,
part.
we are hardwired. Yeah. And so, any attempt to spin or, skew or try to lead the witness in some way like that will be the undoing of your benevolence and can be so damaging to the relationship.
Yeah, because
And
it's going to
so,
feel selfish and
oh,
it's going to feel
yeah,
closed and it'll feel opaque rather than transparent. It's like, oh, I'm trying to give you a false impression of my true motives.
right. I'm
Okay.
trying to pretend I'm benevolent when I'm obviously not, which is actually worse than just not being. If you're transparently, not benevolent, that's better than pretending that you are benevolent and then
Yes.
not being so.
Allow me to direct your attention to the upper center quadrant of the
Right.
diagram where it
The
says
mercenary.
mercenary with a code of honor.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're highly competent and you have high integrity and you have zero benevolence, people will still trust you a little bit because they see you as someone. It's like you give your word, you keep your word. You may be totally selfish, but you have honor. And if I hire you to defend me, then you won't stab me in the back. You'll fight my enemies. But if my enemy hires you first, then you'll come and attack me. And it's nothing personal. It's just business, as the mafia would say. And so, yes, if you had to be in one of these subquadrants, the little orange ones that are where you only have two of the three elements, I would say Mercenary with a code of honor is not a bad place to be to start with. And then you can work your way into the benevolence and become that trusted expert or that
But
trusted
at least
boss.
you're competent and you're integrous, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that element of reliability is huge. So yeah, benevolence is the hard one to give a recipe to. And some people who just aren't naturally very open will feel uncomfortable with this point. And
But certainly
my
the
my
generosity, selflessness piece of it is really about examining your own internal motivations. Like if you're going to
Mhm.
have, if you're going to have, if you're going to give feedback, right?
Oh
We've got,
yeah.
we've got a checklist for our feedback model that says,
Right.
if
Right.
you're not future focused, and if you're not imagining a positive future outcome, and if you are not willing to let the situation go, you should not give the feedback.
Because you're too upset, you're too angry, you're likely to come across as, you know, angry, closed, selfish, mean, punitive,
Right. And
none of which
similarly
invites
through the,
change.
similar through like Brene Brown's clear as kind,
Yes.
methodology, having the conversation before the tough conversation to say, hey, I need to share some really tough news with you, or I need to give you some tough feedback that's going to be hard to hear. But the reason I want you to hear it is because I genuinely care about you. And, obviously you've got to match that with the behavior that says I care about you. You can't just
Right.
say that. But
Yes.
that that positive, like generous, like we have a shared goal here, is part of that generosity and selflessness. And like, hey, if I didn't care about you, I would just, let
Let you
this
fail.
go, let you
I
fail.
would let you fail.
That'd be way easier than having this uncomfortable conversation. but,
Right.
but I'm willing to sacrifice my comfort to help you, you know,
Yeah.
be more
Yeah. To help
successful.
you achieve your potential, which currently I think you're underperforming your potential. And, it's not fair to you if I withhold from you the information you need to know to better step into your potential and perform better. Because I do see a lot of untapped potential in you, and I think that you could do great things, but you're not right now, not at the level I believe you're capable of. So um, I I won't feel that I have integrity as your manager if I don't tell you straight, when there's things you could do better, that I believe you can do better, that I believe are important. And so having an open and transparent positive motive, that totally checks the box for benevolence, in my opinion. And
And that's
when you've
really
done
the only, in my mind, it's really the only way to get there is to analyze your own internal motivations and
mm,
ensure that they truly are benevolent and that your behaviors day to day
right,
line up with that.
oof.
And if they're not, you kind of have no hope of getting there. Sorry.
Y-
Tough fact, but you cannot fake this one. I used to work for an organization where there was a best boss program, and it was kind of about all the nuts and bolts of being a good boss without the actual like benevolence behind being a great boss.
My God, it was like all the behaviors, but none of the spirit, none of the heart.
And it, it was horrible for the culture because it created more distrust than trust.
Here's how to fake benevolence. No, stop! Don't do it. Don't go there. Don't open that door. Yeah,
In fact,
the word.
one
Oh,
time
yes.
didn't we created a fake workshop, Thomas, where we were like where we were coming up with all the ways to
Yeah,
be
harm.
be the prototypical, like, you know
Awful.
awful 90s meme awful boss, like,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, how to pretend to be benevolent, how to cover up your own incompetence. Yeah. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah, that was funny. It should never see the light of day, but it was very therapeutic, I would say. To write that. That was
So how
fun.
about integrity?
Yeah, and of course, we go into this in so much detail in the accountability protocol, because the accountability protocol is the art and science of uh, being dependable, being reliable, of setting expectations and then fulfilling those expectations in a really stellar way. And so There's a whole book on it called The Accountability Protocol, which I wrote. It's on Amazon. I go into the 39 ways that accountability can go sideways and how to avoid each one. And so here, I just want to keep it at the high level of your words and your actions have to match for people to experience you as having integrity. And if you never make a clear promise, and people sometimes do this, they're like, oh, I'm worried, I'm not sure what time I can show up. I'll just keep it vague. It's like, no, don't do it. Don't do it. Because one of two things will happen. Either your vagueness will be like, oh, he has no idea what he's doing, which now it starts to look like you don't have competence even. And the other one is, in the absence of a clear promise from you, they will fill the blank with their own imagination. And they will make up a promise that they will then try to hold you to, because people have a very hard time with unknowns. And so, if you don't make it clear and you leave it fuzzy and blank or out of focus, you are leaving a huge opportunity for the other person to just assume that you'll do what they would have done, or you'll do what the last vendor did, or you'll do what their prior boss did, or you'll do what the culture says we do around here, or something. They will fill the blank space with something. And then they will think that that was your promise, and then they'll want to hold you to it. And then when your behavior doesn't match what they invented in their head, which is very likely that your behavior will differ from that because you didn't control it, because you had your chance to set a clear expectation and you didn't do it. And guess what? Your actions don't match what they invented, and they will blame you. Their subjective assessment of you is you didn't do the thing they thought you had. That is why it is so important to make clear promises, to make them out loud, clearly and transparently. And I would say, if you have a chance, if you have a choice between making one big promise and 3 little ones that add up to the big one, make the 3 little ones that add up to the big one, and then deliver pointedly 3 times. And I would say you could even add, the phrase, as promised, here's the thing, reminding them that you said you would do this, and here you are doing it. And I was very gratified to listen to an Alex Hormozy podcast recently, where he literally said that you make a lot of little promises and you keep each one scrupulously, and you do that in the first 48 hours of signing a new client. So they get this experience of you setting and meeting expectations. Integrity is the first thing people notice about you. Before they can assess your benevolence, before they can assess your competence, they notice, did you show up on time? Did you show up the way they expected you to? Did you set the meeting in a way where it's clear what's going on? Mm-hmm. And so it's the easiest one to screw up. It's the easiest one to check. And it's the easiest one to rebuild. Because
it's also, interestingly, one of the places where when there's either a broken agreement or an agreement that goes into breakdown, using our accountability protocol, where you can renegotiate or unwind the expectations and actually demonstrate both competence and benevolence.
Right. So
through how you handle that breakdown.
Yeah. If there's a service breakdown and you do service recovery so amazingly that they're like, oh my God, you really came through. That was incredible. Now their overall experience of you is much, much larger. And if I told you the bleach story, Jim, this is an example of this. So we were selling a house and a vendor came in to fix a little spot of mold in the attic, little spot of mold. So we went away, we came back the next day, and the entire house reeked of bleach so badly you literally couldn't breathe. You couldn't stay inside for more than a few seconds. The house had become uninhabitable.
Supposed to be having an open house.
No, we were supposed to be closing the sale like the following Monday, and this was on a Friday afternoon. So we go in Saturday morning and the place is uninhabitable, and Monday the other person was to take possession. And they can walk away from the deal on Monday. And it's like, is this house uninhabitable? Well, can we get the bleach reek out? It's like sinking into the wood and into the fabrics and into the carpets. Like, we were freaking out and we're calling, and the emergency number, there was no answer. The emergency number. So we're freaking out, and I'm getting ready to call in a different company to come and do remediation, which I was planning to bill these guys for. Well, before I could get to that, the owners finally got in touch with us, said they would handle it. We came by the next morning, And they had apparently mobilized every fan and air mover in the county to air the house out. You could barely smell anything. They apologized profusely. They knocked the price down. They gave us a list of all the things that they were fixing, like they were fixing the weekend emergency notification. They realized they'd undertrained this one person. They were going to train him. It's like they were giving us a list of all the things they were going to fix because of the pain we'd gone through. And they did such a good job of owning the mistake and fixing the mistake and making us better off than we had been before they started, that I ended up giving them a 5-star review.
Wow.
And
Yep.
I would actually recommend them because when things go sideways, that's when you really test someone's mettle. If everything goes great, all you know is that this person does well when the sky is blue and the wind is gentle and the waves are calm. It's like, oh, that's nice. They're good. They're good in good weather. That's all you really know. But if there's a break, now you should never engineer a breakdown to prove
Right.
this.
That
But
would not be benevolent.
that would not be benevolent. But trust me, life itself will give you opportunities. That the service recovery element where you lean deeply into the integrity piece and you make sure that you fix the thing that went sideways so that your actions match your words and you keep your promise. It can pay off in all three quadrants, all three triads, all three pillars of the leadership model. And I think we should probably wrap because we've covered this pretty well and we're already over a half-hour target mark. Have we covered it to your satisfaction, Jim?
Yeah, I think, my favorite takeaway from this, as far as practical application is when you have that inkling that either you're not feeling trust in another person or
Right.
you have the feeling that another person isn't trusting you, the first place to go is this model and think through, like, is this a
Yeah.
competence issue? Is this a benevolence issue? Or is it is it integrity issue? And you may have some, if you're not trusting someone else, you'll probably have a good sense of
Yeah.
where,
Where's the pain?
yeah, well, I don't feel like they're benevolent,
Point to
or,
the
I
part that hurts.
don't feel like they're competent, or wow, they don't come through. They don't keep their word. So it's an integrity issue. Now, if it's, feeling like someone is not trusting you, it
That's
gives you a
harder.
place to start asking some questions. Or, if it's early in the relationship, you can, use Thomas's tip and focus on integrity. Like that's the first place where you can really start to build trust is,
And
the
I'd take
internal.
it one step further. If you even have a slightly good relationship, you could take this diagram, toss it down in front of them and say, hey, I want you to have an amazing experience of me. I want you to feel a very high level of trust toward me. Can you tell me one thing in any one of these three areas that you would love for me to do differently, do more of, do less of, stop doing, anything I can do that would give you a better experience of me? I would use those words, like to give you a better experience of me in one of these three areas. Because I only want to work on one thing at a time. Like I would love, come on, if someone came to you and said, if I came to you, Jim, I said, Jim,
As long as
I,
my resistance on that would be if it did not true if I didn't feel that person was benevolent already, I would probably mistrust
sure. But you
that.
might give them a little, like
I
not the
might,
top one. You might give them like the
I
second or
might,
third ranked irritation you have just
yeah.
to see what they do with
So
it.
if you, I would caution that if you're going to do that, like check your own internal motivations and make sure that they are truly benevolent. Because if they're not, the other person's gonna know it.
Yeah, I always assume the other person can tell. And that's why you got to like meditate on it yourself. It's like, oh, I have good intentions. Well, do you really? Or is that a story you're telling yourself?
Mhm.
And if you truly want to be trusted because you are trustworthy, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with going to somebody whose opinion you value, who you like, and say to them very honestly, I really want to make sure I'm delivering the best experience that I can to you. I think you deserve that. I'm always working on myself. I would love to know one thing I could do better if you don't mind. And I use this model to keep my thoughts straight. Can you point to one area, like one thing that you would love for me to do a little different? And I'll do my utmost to shift that to prove to you I'm serious.
Yeah, that's a good framing.
And I predict that they will be shocked, maybe a little suspicious, but ultimately delighted. And that gives you one thing to work on. What you don't want to do is throw it down and say, how can I do better? Because they might give you a laundry list. And now that you've asked, if they say 5 things, they're now going to expect you to do 5 things different. And that's a big lift. So only ask for one change at a time. I learned that the hard way with my last girlfriend. I asked how I could be a better boyfriend, and she rattled off a list of 20 things off the top of her head in rapid succession. And I'm like, okay, I can't remember all that. But now guess what? I just raised expectations, didn't I? Oops. So yeah, don't ask for a list. Ask for what's the one thing I can do differently. And then once you do that, you can check in. Hey, am I doing better? What's the second thing I can do better? What's the third thing I can do better? And that could be a really benevolent cycle because, gosh, if one person wants you to shift, maybe others do too that haven't told you. So yeah, it is hard work to be trusted and to be worthy of trust and to be experienced as worthy of trust by others. There is the risk of mismatched expectations on the competence front and fuzzy expectations on the integrity front. And communication is your friend there. Again, we should probably have you, if you want to hear more about that, come listen to our accountability protocol material.
Yeah.
But I am convinced that this model will do wonders to grow how trusted you are and how you can better trust others and how you can have high bandwidth conversations with people about increasing mutual trust. Anything else to say as we sign off?
None for me.
Outstanding. Well, on that, and this is Jim Prinzing. I'm Thomas Cox. We are your hosts for M2 Managing Managers. This is episode 4 on how to build trust, and we'll be back in a few weeks with yet more. Thank you so much.